fight is not even between Wike and Fubara. The fight is between the political elite and the masses, and we know who will suffer. It's already the masses who are suffering from these issues.
So I was back at Trust TV yesterday where we discussed Wike versus Fubara versus the people of Rivers State. We also discussed the drone misfire in Kaduna. We also discussed my call for Tinubu'S resignation, among other things. So take a listen and let me know what you think at the end of the video.
It's indeed a heavily loaded week with the polity ablaze with a variety of unsettling events, from the controversial political fracas between predecessor and successor in Rivers State, to the recent misfire by the Nigerian Army in Igabi, Kaduna State, to the most recent pronouncement by the federal government admitting the role of illegal mining dons in the Northwest, unending banditry. The list goes on. These and countless other issues add to the already harshest realities that Nigerians must confront with daily. On top of this, there is the growing concern about mistrust among Nigerians, among many others. And tonight, we'll strive to unravel some of these concerns with the hope of providing recommendations that could help foster national unity and strengthen our collective bond. Joining me on the show to share his perspective is Chima, a good governance advocate, a public policy analyst, and a pan-Nigerian. Welcome to the program once again, Chima.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a while when we had you for this program. Yes, welcome back then.
Thank you.
Yes. Because we'll take a short break, and when we return, the conversation commences. Don't go away. Yes, Chima. I think we have to start from the south.
Well, let's do
Today, a commissioner resigned, few days after 27 lawmakers resigned. Will Fubara be left with anybody in the coming days?
Well, I've intentionally left out Rivers State in my commentaries and in my analysis for the time being. I knew it had been a raging issue. Some of my friends have asked me to comment on it, but I don't feel that the issue deserves my attention. In my view, there are a lot of issues that are much more pressing to Nigerians than having two former friends fighting dirty at the marketplace. And if I'm to offer any view on that, it will be restricted to maybe two or three. One is that you now see the futility in governors spending their dying moments in office, fighting, spending, and bulldozing their way to have their successors coming. And at the end of each of those experiments, apart from two, maybe what happened in Kwara State between Abdul Razak and former Senate President from Kwara, the former governor. Apart from that, almost all relationships turned sour in a few months. Some of them may not be publicly on display, like you've seen the madness in Rivers State. But then why do you want to go through this lens to install a governor? Because, look, it's not the people that vote this kind of people. It's their predecessors that bulldoze them into office. And then afterwards, you start fighting. That's one on one level. At the second level, the fight is not even between Wike and Fubara. The fight is between the political elite and the masses, and we know who will suffer. It's already the masses who are suffering from these issues, because now governance in Rivers State has taken a backseat, whereas politics and demolition of houses, resignation, counter-resignations, defections, counter-defections are taking place. Amidst all of these things, you ask yourself, what happens to the school children? What happens to the market women? What happens to the people who will be needing public health services in Rivers State? These are areas that the government has divested attention from just so that they can focus on the battle. So when people are taking sides between Wike and Fubara, I see people, you're not, analyzing properly. It's not, has nothing to do between supporting Wike or supporting Fubara. What is happening is that clearly governance has taken the backseat and political gladiators are matching it out in the public domain. So I think that people should recalibrate and see who is really fighting. It's the political elite fighting against the masses, not Wike fighting against the Fubara. That's the way I choose to look at it.
Are our leaders learning any lesson from this godfatherism? Because it is now deeply entrenched, Kogi in my mind. You can see what happened a few years ago, and this is what is happening in Rivers.
To tell you the truth, I think that they're enjoying it. You see, the adrenaline of being in the news, for someone like Wike, if you really looked at his career trajectory, every time you hear Wike in the news, he's fighting someone. whether it's installing secondus, fighting secondus, installing Makarafi, fighting Makarafi. There is a list. Fighting judges, protecting judges. Wike has.
So his second name is Fight.
He's just doing it. He does this for fun. So if you didn't expect this from him, in fact, what would you have expected Wike to do? To sit down and quietly become a minister of the state, FCT? No, he will still fight something to fight. After Fubara, I predicted on your station, Wike will find another person to fight because this is just him. And so I think he gets his attention, the public attention from this. I also think he's doing this because he gets adrenaline. It keeps him busy. It makes him feel relevant. And this is the same thing with governors, outgoing governors. Now, midway into their second term in office, for people who were privileged to get second terms, you see that they've done this for 6 years, 7 years. There's nothing again. It doesn't kick. There's no that kick, that adrenaline you get waking up in the morning. And so what is the next best thing to do? To try to install someone. So they call it a major project. And they devote 6 or 7 months into installing. So that running around gives them joy. And then what then do you do when you're now an ex-governor? To sit down and retire in peace? No, you have to find someone to fight. And so that fight also. So I see that our political gladiators are enjoying this thing, whether it's Wike versus Fubara, whether it's what is going to happen soon in Kogi or wherever. I think they're enjoying this, and it's time for us to sit back. And why must the citizens keep voting, assuming that we are the ones that voting? Why would someone who we have given a 7 or 8 year mandate, and after the mandate, we've seen that this person may not have done to the best of his capacity or may not have fulfilled all the promises, and yet that same person comes back to prescribe to us who should succeed him? I mean, the assumption is that one person, Wike, is now, his intelligence is now superior to that of all the voters in Rivers State. To say that the voters in Rivers State do not know who they should pick. If they had the wisdom to vote you, Wike, why do you think that they won't exercise that wisdom in voting who will replace you? Why must it be you, the outgoing governor, who should prescribe to us, who should even hold our nose and force it down our throats, who should become the governor in your state? So I think that the citizens need to sit back and have this discussion. It's not about the godfather, the godson. It's about what or who or what processes should be the best for delivery of good governance, which is always the end point. The end point is governance, not the names. We don't care whether Wike is the governor of Rivers State. We don't care if it is Fubara or Similai or anything. What the people care is that at the time you need governance services, that they are there for you. If you have accident, that emergency care services are there for you. If you have school children, that they are taught properly in the school. Those are the deliverables you are focused on, not whether Wike, Fubara. I don't focus on people. I like focusing on the issues.
Yes. You see, this issue in Rivers has taken the attention of most Nigerians because a lot of things happening. Now, these 27 lawmakers led by Martins, Amaule, their seats have been declared vacant. Mm-hmm. But we saw them today sitting in an auditorium, had police protection. Yesterday, it was the 4 others at the government house receiving the budget from the governor. They also had police protection. Who is actually who in this equation?
Well, if you have a lot of influence and money to throw around, you can get any system in Nigeria to do what you want it to do. The laws are there. Again, it's not left for us it's left for the judiciary to interpret. But then when you approach the judiciary, is there confidence that they will interpret the laws properly? And so you leave politics in the hands of the politicians to keep doing what they are doing. What I keep seeing is that the governance is now at the back seat. Whether the law is passed by 4 members of the National State House of Assembly or by 27 members of the nation, whether they are in PDP or defected to the APC, the question I ask is the budget that was presented to the State House of Assembly and was passed in less than 3 days, did it receive enough scrutiny? Were the lawmakers able to look at these documents to be sure that the votes, that the interest of the market women, interest of the Okada riders, interest of the everyday citizens of the River State, on whose account they sit in that hallowed chamber, if it is still hallowed, have you made sure to be sure that these interests are protected? What I see here is that possibly you will have people who will say, oh, I'm more affiliated to Wike than Fubara, and then others will say, I'm more affiliated to... So it becomes a question of, by the way, this tells you that there has never been a State House of Assembly in River State. It's just people, answering names, honorable, but they're not honorable in either deed or fact.
But how did you arrive at this?
Because the State House of Assembly have not been sitting up to their responsibilities. Go to Anambra, go to Enugu and see what is happening. All first-time governors are presenting loan requests to the State House of Assembly. And then when you present this loan request, before you turn back, they've approved it without debate. Does this show seriousness? In Anambra, it was the same thing. In Enugu, it was the same thing. In many other states, there is no state house of assembly. That these men see themselves as offshoots, perhaps senior social assistants to the governor. That what they do is what will please the governor, and they don't see that they have a role to play in democracy. How do you want to present a budget to a state house of assembly that is robust, and it is passed in 2 days or 3 days?
In hours,
and you think in hours. And you think justice has been done to those documents. The governor presents a loan request. What the state, like in my own state of Anambra, where I know the facts, what you're supposed to do is that you're supposed to buy the law, make sure that those loans are tied to projects, and where they are not tied to projects, you tell the governor, go back and tie these loans to every kobo you are going to borrow, you must tie them to projects. Give us the cost.
Not a blanket.
Not a blanket, not say blanket approval. And what you see is that it's blanket approval, left, right, and I'm telling you about this because I've been focused on those states. What is happening in Northeast and Northwest is not painting a different picture. You see that there is no state house of assembly in practice. We may have them in name. They might have sirens. They might be, wasting public resources. But in practice, I don't think that they do what they ought to do. Because if you have an independent state house of assembly, regardless of whether the outgoing governor or the new governor is fighting, the members are there doing their work. But today you see that they are not independent people, that the governor's OES members. And that's why you have 20-something of them dancing to Wike's tune. You have 4 of them dancing to Fubara's tune. Expect the numbers to keep changing until Wike and Fubara outdo each other.
Chima, you are an advocate of good governance. I am repeating this. Is Nigeria's constitution sacrosanct anymore? Yesterday we quoted section 68, and I wish we have it so that we quote it good. Yeah, subsection 1G of the constitution provides that a member of the Senate or House of Representatives shall vacate his seat in the House if being a person whose election to the House becomes a member of another political party before the expiration of the period for which that House was elected, provided that his membership of the latter party is not as a result of a division in the political party of which he was previously a member of, or of a merger of 2 or more political parties or factions by one of which he was previously sponsored. Are our legislators aware of this section at all?
Well, I think they are, right? But then...
Why are they trampling on it then?
For some time now, Nigeria's constitution has been a mere suggestion to our political gladiators. It's just a mere piece of...
They don't see it as sacrosanct.
It's not sacrosanct to them. And I'll give you instances. Move away from the issues in River State.
Okay.
Let's go to security. The law is clear on who should possess arms. Dangerous weapons, automatic weapons, rifles. We don't have like you have in the United States where citizens can buy arms. You have to, it's a regulated thing. Is it so in Nigeria in practice? The answer is no. If you're now talking about terrorists, non-state actors, they are there. But then you now see that, for instance, in the South where we're discussing today, thankfully, you see the emergence of non-state actors who are enjoying tacit support. In fact, there are some of them that are doing contract services for the federal government. Your constitution says that it is the federal government that has the monopoly of violence. But then the federal government now puts its constitution behind it and now goes doing deals with former terrorists, former freedom fighters, whatever name you want to call them. But these are people whose arms are not particularly loyal to the state, and they are using that arms, and the government knows that they are using these arms. On the election day, you will see a police vehicle. Policemen are there, military resources are there, but thugs are inside the vehicle. You see police resources working side by side with thugs. Is this in your constitution? So the constitution has not even what the paper it has been written on. So if it has been observed in breach in many other instances, I also expect it to be observed in breach in the instance in River State. And I won't be surprised that Supreme Court, Appeal Court, or indeed any other court endorse the kind of rascality that you see in River State today.
Okay. I'm happy because it's like you have deliberately now moved our conversation to the area I really want us to talk about, the misfire by the Nigerian army in Kaduna State. You rarely see the story anymore, whether you hear it on radio or you see it on television or on the pages of the newspapers. It has happened. Over 120 people, they have perished.
You see, Nigerians have this propensity for a new developing story, a breaking news kind of society, right? I call it this curious inability to stay on issues, right? Today, everybody is discussing Wike, assuming without acknowledging it, that Wike Fubara is an issue that deserves our attention. Can we stay on this issue till it's resolved? No. Tomorrow, another breaking news. All of us are now experts on that breaking news. So you see people who are not vested in solving issues. And you've been in the news for decades now. You know that every new week, there must be breaking. So Nigerians are jumping from one breaking news to the other without getting closure on any. Look at what happened in IDP in Kaduna. Like you mentioned, it's no longer being discussed. And since it's no longer being discussed, what do you think will be the outcome of the panel that the government said they have set up?
Distrust, right?
So
why is distrust becoming the norm now in our polity? Yes, among Nigerians and between Nigerians and the government.
Well, for the government, the distrust from the government is earned. It's earned distrust because over time we've seen, for instance, judiciary make conflicting pronouncements on a single issue. We've seen them interpret constitutions differently. At the executive side of things, we've seen failures, policies of assaults, we've seen broken promises. So there's nothing that instills confidence. At the legislative side of the equation, it's even worse that Nigerians now see their legislature as rubber stamp. But even today, I now argue that this 10th or is it 11th National Assembly have taken away both the rubber and the stamp, that these men are now presidents, choir band leaders, that this is what they have reduced the National Assembly. Nigeria's National Assembly, largest democracy in Africa, largest democracy in the black, that the parliament is now reduced to the president's cheerleaders. That's where we are. So why should Nigerians trust these institutions? But move away from that to talk about, because these people did not fall from heaven. Tinubu did not fall from heaven. If you have a nation where people don't obey traffic lights, if they become presidents, they will not obey your laws. If you have a constitution where people don't even obey queues at the bank, anywhere, how do you think that they can conduct themselves in an ordinary manner when you give them power and influence? So you see that what is happening in the government is a reflection of what we are or where we are in our developmental journey. And not to blame Nigerians unnecessarily, I think that development is a growth process. And so we're at this place where we have not fully developed our character. Or if you say that our character is fully developed, it is not so much so in the positive realm. And so what you see happening is happening with your tailor, for instance. You can't ask him, I have a wedding next weekend. You will have to fight over for your clothes to be delivered on time. If you send a car to the mechanic today, you have to police them to do their jobs. If you where will you? It's a broken society that trust, which is a fundamental aspect of any working society, has completely gone out the window. And my argument is now that people have to pay more attention, spend a greater deal of resources to police our institutions, the way we police our tailors, the way we police our mechanics, the way even when the traffic light has said go, you will still look around because some guy who is running against the traffic might put your life at peril. That is the same way we will police all institutions of government. You don't want to go home and sleep and assume that the president will act in your best interest. You don't want to go home and assume that the National Assembly will act in your best interest. You don't want to go home and assume that the judges will decide cases in the interest of the society. You now have seen what is happening. So we should give them our tailored treatment. We should give them the mechanic treatment. Follow them back to back until this is done. Finally on this, anywhere you see democracy working, whether in France, in the UK, in USA, maybe you say you can now include India, right? Anywhere you see democracy working, it is working on two planks. There is the demand side of democracy and there is the supply side of democracy. The supply side of governance, rather, is people in authority whose responsibility is to provide governance services. For instance, we need roads, we need airports, we need bridges. Those are people in the executive, they provide that. We need new laws, we need better laws. Those are people in the legislature to provide that services. You need better justice system. You need people in the judiciary to offer that. So those are people who are in the supply side of governance. But then you also have people in the demand side of governance. The media, the civil society, the masses, opposition political parties, who should better demand. Anywhere you see it world over, the demand side of governance is always ahead of the supply side. Because if you have demanded for 10 things, they might supply 3. And you are still demanding. But then if you don't demand at all and you are banking on the assumed benevolence of the supply side guys, it does not work. So the problem I see with Nigeria is that yes, you have leadership issues like the demand side people, the functional side of the democracy, which is the supply side, is not working. But it's not working because the supply side is lethargic. You have a lethargic opposition party in Nigeria. You have a media space that has been almost completely captured. You have a civil society.
We are really free here. How we have issues with them.
With due respect to those platforms who have taken the risk to stand out.
Like Daily Trust.
Who have taken the risk to stand out. With due respect, but then when you look at your sister players, and you've seen that they have almost, kowtowed to the popular sentiment in the society. So you talk about the media, you talk about the opposition party. I wouldn't say that the opposition party has been bought over, but then I have not seen that commensurate push. The only time Nigerians experienced something that looks like an opposition party between 1999 and now was in 2014, 2015, shortly after the APC-ACM merger. CPC merger. After that, the 8 years of PDP was 8 years of writing.
Are you saying we don't have serious opposition parties now?
No.
And if we do, what do you think they are doing? Sleeping on duty?
They are sleeping on duty because you remember the days of shadow government. For instance, today, the ruling government has presented a budget. You would expect the opposition platforms to present a counter budget, to present counter ideas. What you see is that they pick one or two aspects of that budget and tweet about it and go home. You can't achieve the kind of society you want by issuing press statements and writing occasional tweets.
And the next day is another thing, like the 160 billion for each around 160 million.
And then even the opposition platforms are waiting to collect their own. So in that atmosphere, even the citizens were not helping matters. There are times that citizens may have to organize and make their voices loud and heard. That is our responsibility, to make governance demands concrete and urgent. If we fail at this, we don't have the right to blame the supply side guys for failing in their own.
Where are we getting it wrong? I want to give an example, still on the Kaduna incident. There was a story we carried 2 days ago. A certain group of lawyers on behalf of the community dragged the federal government asking for damages and all that. But a story came yesterday, some people from that community disowning those who issued a statement. They said, no, they didn't drag the federal government to court. Meaning, the man with the highest bidder take his own?
Yes, you now have that politicians have found a way to game the system, right? If I, for instance, who is the head of my family, says, I don't like this, they can easily come back and say, oh, my second son has now said that he's no longer in tune, because at the right incentive, if you have a society where there is no character, like I've mentioned, at the right incentive, politicians can get anybody. Not anybody, not everybody, but some people to say what they want them to say. So what you see is trying to create what we call smoke screen. I think there's another name they call it, red herring, right? So you wanted to create a smoke screen so that you will limit the impact or the weight of the people who have dragged the federal government to court, or who have said that they're dragging the federal government to court. So you want to bring in, and these are people died in their community, people who are mourning. Perhaps they didn't even give them any money. It was just mere promise and maybe a few thousands of naira. And they are running out, forgetting that 100 people died. And this is not the first time this kind of thing is happening. You remember the IDP camp in Iran that was bombed by Air Force? Till today, nobody has had the last of it. And so that's why I don't expect anything reasonable unless Nigerians mobilize in their numbers to keep at the issues, to insist on it until it is solved. Because, come to think of it, Nigeria used to have the best military in Africa. And today, equipments are no longer safe in their hands. If you're not hearing of accidental discharge, you are hearing of accidental bombing. And whereas people in authority feel that these issues are secluded to remote areas, because the Tundun, where it happened, is a remote area in Kaduna State. The Ran, where the IDP camp incident happened, is a remote area in Borno. So people don't take... But imagine one day that the National Assembly is in full session, and an aircraft comes in, drops a bomb, hovers, turns around, drops a bomb, and then the next time the military says, oh, it was an accidental discharge of weapons, it was a drone misfire, and then begging us to forgive them. No, people have to take responsibility for their actions. And what we have seen is that nobody takes responsibility for these actions. If it happens in civilized climes, you should have seen senior management cadre in that same institution that happened resigning because people... I'll give you this instance. You know, I've been working around issues in the Middle Belt. And I go there, interview communities, community heads, those places that you hear in the news that headsmen or whatever crisis erupts. I've been there myself. I've worked on shallow graves. I've been in houses that were burnt down. I have pictures all over. And these are part of the research work we're doing on the crisis in the Middle Belt. And you ask them, what happens? Is it that you guys don't call the police or military resources? when these things happen. They say, oh, we call them. Then you ask the military, what happens? Is that people don't call you in good time to give you adequate time to respond? They say, no, we can't move from our station. We have to wait for orders.
From above.
So someone has to, even people who are stationed at a particular checkpoint cannot leave that checkpoint to respond to a crisis situation 10 minutes away until they receive a signal from their commanding officer or from whoever is above them. And so if you have to go through these lines of checks and balances or line of commands before you can intervene in that, that shows you that nobody can deploy a drone service or a bomb in Nigeria without clearing it at the highest level.
Yeah.
And so who issued that clearance? On what resources, on what basis was those clearance issues?
Some people are still saying it was not accidental. You share that sentiment?
You know, I don't want to function in the realm of conspiracy theorists. I like staying with what is known. Like today, we can't begin to, I am not God, you are not God, and we can't judge the intentions of people who did this. The only thing that the facts say is that there was a misfire. And then the facts also can say that the military has a protocol for deploying this kind of resources. And now what we want to see is where all those protocols adhered to. If someone told them that the community that is celebrating their festival is now a terrorist organization, who confirmed that report and who approved that? Where was this lapse in judgment? Was it the boy that triggered it was trigger happy? Or did someone above him sign off on this? Or did someone above him sign off? So you must want to trace the whole chain of command before it got to the people that deployed the drone. If you investigate all of these things, that is when we can arrive at the conclusion, right? And so I will plead with Nigerians to maybe, yes, these institutions have given us a good reason to suspect any and everything they do, right? But then you also want to stay on the facts. Today, what I want to see happen is that Nigerians do a full-blown audit of what happened. From the person who has the highest authorization to the least person who pressed the button, and because drones don't fire themselves. They don't fire themselves. Someone must have to give instructions. And before that instruction is given, someone has to sign off on it. So you want to look at the whole chain of command. And then only when you have looked at it, will you find where the water entered to the dam to the point of breaking the dam.
Are you saying they should restrict the investigation to just this latest incident? Because here in Daily Trust, we curated quite a number of incidences, about 16
of those incidences.
From 2014.
And
9 years, 16 incidences. And you know, you made mention that we easily forget and things keep happening. What will be your prescription for government to take action and stop some of these things?
I totally understand the military. I think I was listening to CDS on a platform, and he was saying, and I was watching both what he was saying and his body language. I think the military has always deferred more. The military has allowed itself to be captured by the feelings of its boys, because they're always talking about the morale of the boys, morale of the boys, morale of the boys, and which is a healthy debate to have. Because if you are a CEO in such an organization, maybe a commanding officer, you want to pay attention to the morale of the boys. But the morale of the boys cannot hold you at jugular, that when the boys do costly mistakes, you cannot punish those errant boys. And you're talking about morale, because the military has all it takes to investigate this issue and to fire or appropriately reprimand those who made a lapse in judgment for this to happen. But then always they are in trying to protect the morale of the boys, the morale within the organization. And because they are deferring more to the morale of the organization, they don't want to pay attention to the damage those things are doing to the society. Today, you now have had, as you mentioned, 16 incidences in 9 years. I've not even kept track of these things. And it's quite alarming. And then if you allow it unpunished, only see where it could get to. And then you know that even if these mistakes are innocent mistakes, very soon politicians will find ways to exploit it. Because your opponent can be holding a campaign rally and then accidental misfire.
Yeah.
For instance, if it has gotten to that stage, maybe 27 members in the State House of Assembly in Rivers State could be holding a meeting and then accidental misfire. So if we allow this problem, it could get to a place where political actors can seek to benefit from the weaknesses of the system. And if we get to that place, I don't know what will happen to Nigeria, because these are the only people we can leave such equipment to. And we won't say let them not have bombs again. It's important to the anti-terrorism fight that they're prosecuting. And so if we cannot leave these devices at their key again, is it me that they will bring it to my house, or is it you that so it is important that these institutions are protected at the highest degree possible.
And you can see the incidents there. You can see Borno, you can see Zamfara, you can see Yobe, you can see Kaduna, you can see Katsina. Very sad, and hundreds of people there. Okay. But we'll leave this for analysis after we return from the break. Yes, we also take a short break, and when we return, the conversation continues. Don't go away.
We started manufacturing leather since 1958. But the most important thing is that if the system is checked correctly, we won't have where we are now.
If somebody has depression, they may just be very irritable and unproductive in the office. So you find on average already about 1 in 4, 1 in 5 Nigerians already have a mental illness, a mental health condition that needs some form of attention.
No matter how good an economy is, if the federal government goes bust, believe me, everything in the economy is just a matter of time it will go bust. So first of all, about maybe slightly above, below 70% is in federal government securities.
If government has banned importation of fertilizer and states are doing it at the level of governance, but I believe that production and distribution of fertilizer should be left to the private sector.
This is the general multi-purpose card, and it has a chip here. So this chip is about 80 kilobytes. The one that you get from the bank for ATM is just 4 kilobytes. So this is like 20 times.
Welcome back. If you are just joining, this is Daily Politics on Trust TV. Do well to follow the conversation across our social platforms on Facebook, Instagram, and watch us live on YouTube. Still having the studio, Chima Christian, a public policy analyst and a pan-Nigerian. You've seen the infographic there. Over 400. And you know why we stopped at 400? Because we go with official figures. The incident there in Kalabalage in 2017 that you see around 60, like Human Rights Watch, they put over 250 figures there. Quite a number of organizations, even Amnesty, they put the figure over 200. But what authorities gave was around that, and we stand by it so as not to. But civilians being killed through aerial bombardment, over 400 in 9 years, and they call it friendly fire or something like that. What is wrong, and how can we correct this anomaly?
It's a long process that got us here. It's not a one-day thing. Over time, we've seen the degradation of Nigeria's institutions, but since we are focused on the security, you talk about the institutions of reward, the processes of reward. How are these people hired? How are they promoted? What is the training like? And these ordinances that they have, what are the protocols, the safety protocols they have around it? What are the internal operating guidelines within the system? And so at that institutional level, there's a problem. But then leave the institution alone and then come at our own level as individuals. We don't demand enough. We don't.
In terms of accountability?
In terms of accountability, because we just allow these things to happen. Maybe 1 or 2 people protest about it for a day or two, and then they move on with their lives. And that is not the best way to do it, because, like you mentioned, 16 in 9 years. Now, look.
16 incidences.
16
this
incidences.
Is aerial bombardment.
Aerial bombardment.
Not to talk about ground bombardment.
On the ground, you will see because if you go to the northeast, you will see the kind of, I could say, outrightly unlawful ways that the military has engaged in the campaign against terrorism.
Communities completely wiped out.
Completely wiped out, completely erased.
Under the guise of trailing trailing terrorists.
You cannot come out to a marketplace and open fire on everybody, for instance. saying that you are pursuing the criminal. You must find ways to isolate the criminals from the people who are doing their everyday lives. For instance, if a particular society has, for instance, a soldier was killed in a particular neighborhood, that does not mean that the market women in that neighborhood, the farmer in that neighborhood, the school children in that neighborhood, or indeed every youth in that neighborhood has conspired to kill the soldier. So you don't go burning people's houses, burning down places of worship, burning down communities because you want. But that's a different question. The issue at hand today is that drones, aerial bombardments are now unsafe. These are the ones that have been declared that these people are not terrorists. Imagine the number of communities that have been bombed and tagged terrorists. The number of individuals that can be sitting down in their houses, celebrating whatever feast, eating, all of a sudden something hovers and then drops bomb on them. And then turns back and drops, and then they will now write and tell us, oh, these people have eliminated terrorists. Who are the terrorist people eating in their houses? And I'm not saying that terrorists don't have families, but I'm saying that the duty of care, to be careful in isolating red from black, white from gray, that duty of care is no longer being taken care of by the military. And maybe a time will come when we will step aside nationalism, and then, because we know that these resources are not produced locally, we know that Nigeria does not produce these drones here. We know that these bombs, these ammunitions are not produced here. But then, if it can no longer be safe in the hands of the military, maybe it's time we can now take up international advocacy to tell international community, look, stop selling drones to Nigeria. Because until they show that they can use it, until they show that they have learnt all the protocols around handling, you don't give, IEDs to children to play with. I mean, at some level, you can give IEDs to factory workers, to miners.
It took years for the Super Tucano to arrive because they put a lot of stringent measures around trust.
These are the issues. You can't buy this kind of equipment without taking care. Okay, for instance, if Nigeria is, for instance, to have nuclear energy, for instance, and we have this kind of laxity in the system, nuclear reactor, once there is a single mistake, it wipes out the whole generation. And that place will remain hazard, prone to hazard for years. You know about this.
Is there any relationship, Chima, between the protracted nature of the insecurity in Nigeria and the lack of trust between those who are supposed to secure us? I'm talking about security operatives and the locals.
Well, the manner with which, for instance, the security agencies have prosecuted the fight against criminality, whether it's insurgency, whether it's other peacekeeping missions that they are doing internally, has not engendered confidence. I see now what the military sometimes try to do free medical outreaches to communities to engender trust. But then after you have given them free medical outreach, and say that something happens and one soldier dies, and we're not praying for that to happen, the same people you gave free medical outreach on Monday, you look into their eyes and burn their houses on Tuesday. And on Wednesday, you come back to tell them to trust you. It won't happen. Trust is earned. And for Nigerian military, they are always keen to do this bravado. Look, it was even the IGP of police who said it in a Senate hearing the other day. I think when the Senate invited them, he said that I have long been saying this, that Nigeria can mint terrorists faster than the government can kill. Nigeria, again, can mint terrorists faster than the government can kill. Looking at the high youth unemployment, looking at all the indices, and looking at all the grievances, there is no section of Nigeria that does not have grievance against the Nigerian state. Is it the Northeast? Look at the kind of underdevelopment in the Northeast. People here there have legitimate grievances against the Nigerian state. Is it the Northwest that has produced more than other regions, the president of this country? And look at the rates and the incidences of insecurity even in Buhari's Katsina state, where Katsina has produced not just Buhari, but many presidents. Look at what is happening. Look at the literacy rates. So the Northwest has legitimate reasons. Nigeria is not working for them. Is it the South? There is no region you will go to today that does not have oxes to grind against the Nigerian state. And when you have that atmosphere that people are feeling unhappy about the establishment politics, about the Nigerian state, if you now bring in political platforms or motivators, political religious, and then you start equipping the people with the right incentives, telling them what they want to hear. Like you see in the Southeast, when ESN started in the Southeast, make no mistake about it, a lot of Southeasterners support them. Even till today, a lot of Southeasterners are supporting them. You go to the Northeast.
Even though they are killing them, they are also killing the locals.
Yes. Even today, there are still some local people who are still sympathetic to Boko Haram, whether we like it or not. Because the Nigerian state has failed these people, and these people offer some kind of promise. Their promise, they lack the capacity to fulfill it, by the way. But then, because they offer something that looks like an alternative, people are in a hurry to grab. So when you have this atmosphere where the nation state, where terrorists can recruit faster than you can kill, if you kill terrorists today, 100 of them, they can recruit 1,000 tomorrow, either by inducing them, either by giving them loans, either by giving them bags of rice. We have seen this happen, and you know this to be true.
Are you worried with phantom claims? I'm using this word to demonstrate how Nigerians are feeling. For instance, just a few days ago, the Minister of Solid Minerals said that they have established that some, politicians, they are behind the bandits around Zamfara, the Northwest, for this gold mining and all that. For more than 15 years, we have heard that politicians were behind Boko Haram. Few years ago, many Bureau de Change offices were closed down, the owners arrested and put behind bars that they were funding terrorism. But no diligent prosecution. Can we say our leaders are actually deceiving Nigerians and they are using instrument of state for coercion?
I agree with that. Perhaps I don't feel that successive governments in Nigeria have put in, because for you to fight these things, you have to put in the work. It's a lot of hard work at any level. But then sometimes they just want to sit in their offices, write one executive order, and everything is gone. Just like the military will wake up, want to wipe off the entire community, and you think you've wiped off criminality. No, you are just sowing seeds for further criminality, right? Because those people who killed soldiers, for instance, will not be there when you come. It is the dependents, it is their fathers, their mothers, their relatives, and people who are just innocently members of the society that you will inflict harm on. So you see that the blanket approach has not worked. And so you have to painstakingly sort issues through. And our politicians, our civil servants have not had that duty of care, that presence of mind to be meticulous in their approach. I will give another instance away from the one you already established clearly. You saw that in the run-up to the presidential elections, the general elections, President Buhari and Godwin Emefiele came up with this Naira redesign policy. And the only thing they were telling us is that politicians had a stash of cash, a cash in their soakaway pits, wherever, that they want to compromise the elections with. And if you make this claim and you know these politicians, instead of going after these politicians, who you, by the way, handed over to, you now wanted to punish 220 million innocent people because a few politicians who are not up to 0.05% of the population hid cash. And because of that, people were slumping in banking halls, fighting themselves dirty over withdrawing cash that legitimately belongs to them. So you now see that you know who the culprits are, or at least you claim to know, but you don't want to do something about it. You are now punishing the whole populace because of the few alleged sins of a few. So when these politicians tell us that, oh, we know politicians are behind Boko Haram, we know politicians are behind Zamfara, I think it's a mere political statement. They don't have any willingness whatsoever to back up those claims with actions. And even where they want to do it, you also see that they lack the political will to do so.
Do you think President Tinubu is towing a different path to what we came out from?
Anybody who becomes Nigeria's president, even if he is an invalid, has the potential and the capacity to do good.
How do you mean? Yes.
The office of the president commands. You see, I don't think in some sense that the American president, Joe Biden, has the kind of leverage Tinubu has. There are things Biden would want to do.
Biden, of all people.
Yes, there are things
the powerful president in the world.
Yes.
You think Tinubu has more
leverage? And I'll show you. If Biden wants to do some policies, for instance, he will be limited by a robust media, a robust civil society, a robust opposition platform. Sometimes you see there is a stalemate in the House. There is the House, the Senate, their lower house have capacity.
National Assembly.
Even the bureaucracy has the impact on the president. But in Nigeria's system, the president has a lot of leeway. He can send any bill to the National Assembly and be sure that it will be passed the same day. He can say anything and be sure that Nigerian media will carry it to the same day.
If he wants to perform, he can perform.
If he wants to perform, he can perform. If he doesn't want to perform, all of those checks and balances that should steer him into the right direction will not be there. And so that is why you will see that anybody who becomes Nigeria's president will either be a colossal failure or a spectacular performer, because the system has made it so much so that that thing revolves around the office of the president, that's an important office, an important tool for good. So if Tinubu wants to do good, believe me, he can do good. If not, it will be another 4 or 8 years of complaining.
You once alluded to advising him to go or
Yes.
to step aside.
Yes.
Have you changed that?
No. If I meet the president today, I'll say, Mr. President, respectfully, because I was at a program like this, and we were discussing something else. And the presenter just asked me, what is my advice to Tinubu? And I say, my advice to Tinubu is to resign.
Why? Why will he resign? This is a person voted by millions of Nigerians, Chima.
Well, see my argument. You see, after the 1993 elections, your generation, my parents' generation, never really recovered from the trauma of having their hope annulled. It was an outright annulment of hope.
This was 30 years ago, 1993.
But you saw what it did to that generation. Civic participation dipped. A lot of people who participated in that election have not voted till today. And if you don't manage the outcome of 2023 well, this is the first time you see young Nigerians in their numbers since 1999 come out to participate. And not just that the person they voted did not win. The processes of Tinubu's emergence has serious question marks around him. Whether you are talking about his qualification to even run in the first place, whether you are talking about the drug issues, whether you are talking about the nomination process, whether you are talking about the manner in which INEC flagrantly disobeyed their own internal guidelines and even disavowed.
Are you talking as an obedient or articulate?
No. You see, till today, I am a member of the People's Democratic Party. But when my party went to the primaries in 2021, or to the primaries that produced Atiku, I wrote clearly, since then till now, I've not attended any party function. And I said this is not the best way to go for the party. And some of the things that happened to the party were predicted, because we said that the party has lost the Southeast on the account of the quid pro quo that the party has refused to do. And that the party has a clear zoning formula, and Nigeria has a rotational that formula, that the party is hurting itself by not following that. So my affiliation to any political party does not in any way affect my judgment. Like when I came, I don't know if it was a platform that belongs to you or another platform, and they asked me about fuel subsidy, and I said my mind, and I said to the presenter, look, if Peter Obi had become the president of Nigeria, I may have become a part of the president's media team. And if Peter removed subsidy, I would defend his removal of subsidy.
But why are you not defending
now? Tinubu has refused, and that is why I defended it, because...
Okay, you defended it.
Yes, it is.
Are you satisfied with what is going on now?
No.
Okay.
What we said is that subsidy has to be removed, but then you have to be careful about it. So what we criticize is not the removal of subsidy. What we criticize is the processes around it, because regardless of who removes subsidy, it is agreed by civil society that subsidy has to be removed in one way or the other. But then what we don't like is the ad hoc and the reckless manner it was removed. So I don't care who becomes the president, whether it's the person I voted or not. What we are interested is in the outcome for the people. And so on the issue of whether I think Tinubu should resign, Tinubu, in my view,
because we're rounding up, yes.
Tinubu, in my view, his ascension and the processes around that has damaged the national psyche.
But Nigerians are angry now, especially youths, resentment very high. What do you think leaders must do to assuage the feelings of Nigerians?
At the level of Tinubu, even if Tinubu builds 100 skyscrapers, he will not change the way young people see him. Because the processes that led to
maybe you, because the way I see him is different. I see him as my president.
Okay, you know what? Go to the, because I'm part of the NSAS generation. There's a certain way our generation looks at this man. And what has happened to us is that a lot of us feel defeated psychologically. Between that election and now, just go and see the number of young Nigerians who are in their droves wanting to leave Nigeria. Some of them are commenting they will never vote again in their lives because of an
voter apathy.
So in that case, even if you stabilize the economy and grow Nigeria's economy at 6% per annum for 4 years, and then you have a whole generation that will not participate again, that will not demand for more, that will not vote again. In that case, which one do you consider weightier? And I consider, in my view, that getting back young people to believe that their voices can be heard is better than growing the economy at GDP or whatever it is that Tinubu says his agenda is for Nigeria.
Who will do that magic?
Tinubu should start by resigning. Nigeria can produce a replacement for him.
Meaning you are calling for another kind of democracy because he's the democratically elected president. We won't have any other one until 2027.
No, it's not so, because in the US, people resign. When you've not done right, you resign. Liz Truss just resigned. People in the UK have been seriously because if you're not able to, okay, let's assume that you said that
finally
your interest is in growing the economy. Since you now does not have the capacity, for instance, or that your policies have not led to the growth of the economy, why can't you step aside honorably? So Nigeria should begin to have that conversation, that we don't have to wait for 4 years, that we can insist that if you're not doing it, Oga, on your honor, step aside, let someone else come and do it, and let's see if there will be a change.
Thank you very much, Chima Christian, good governance advocate, public policy analyst, and a pan-Nigeria, for coming to the program.
Thank you. And then if you hear that they've picked me up, also report that they've picked me up.
Because I hope you enjoyed the program, and that's a wrap on today's package. We sincerely hope you found the conversation engaging and informative. And be sure to join Daily Politics Live, airing every weekday, and also our special package on Friday, during which we open our telephone line for you to comment on national issues. Once again, we thank you for watching. Bye-bye for now. I'm Hamza Idris.